There are no containers made in the Western Hemisphere. 98% of them are made in China, 1% are made in Indonesia, and 1% are made in Vietnam. You cannot get a brand spanking new container in the Western Hemisphere.
If you're a residential real estate agent earning $200,000 a year and you want to grow your passive income, this show's for you. Learn the secrets other agents use and hear from experts in our field in order to guide you along your journey to investing in assets like apartment communities so that you can turn your commissions into cash flow. I'm Randall McLeod. Let's go, baby. All right. Welcome back. I'm your host, Randall McLeod. Excited to have you on today. We are talking with Juan Cuevas. He is the owner of Uncontained Living. We'll talk about what that is in a second. We jump in. He's in the Texas market. He's in real estate. He has a background in multifamily, worked for Millichap, transacted over $200 million in sales. And you guys got a ton of experience on multiple fronts in the real estate space, from lending, commercial lending, and residential lending. Also in the brokerage side of the business as well. Recently got out of that. And since I think it was COVID, he was saying, he has jumped into container homes, and fascinating space. So in my goal to bring you alternative assets that you can look at, either investing in or buying or using in your investing dreams, I wanted to bring Juan on and talk to him about container homes, because to me, it's fascinating. I have looked at mobile homes in the past to put onto land, to get away from doing the fix and flip model and simply just having something that's already built and put out there super easy, super quick. If it's something that you've considered, something that you haven't even considered, I mean, it's a different type of asset, and it could make your life a lot easier if you're looking for something that's just built and ready to go at a high quality. So let's dive in. Let's talk to him and find out what it is about container homes. We'll hear his story, talk about his past, kind of what's going on, and what got him to this point as well. If you're getting value out of the show, then please jump on, rate, review it. Helps me out a lot. Helps me bring on guys like Juan and gives us a chance to just keep the show going. So without further ado, Juan, let's go. All right, Juan, welcome to the show. It's great to have you on. This should be a good conversation. We're going to talk about container homes and that space. Before we even dive into that, you and I were talking just a second ago about your history and your journey. So if you want to just kick us off, kind of tell us who Juan is and give us this story, man.
Sure. I started my career in New York City. From there, originally. Cue the Texas, what is it, the Pace Picani commercial?
Yeah.
Get a rope.
New York City.
Yeah. I like because that commercial anyway.
That what brought you here? You're like, I got to go there.
Pretty much. So yeah, I started in New York City at a little boutique firm called New York City Apartments. And we started at the George Washington Hotel, which was the original building. It was 23rd in Lexington. And I was really young, 21 years old. And it just happened to be, I kind of fell into this very lucrative job of essentially renting apartments, the same way like apartment locators work down here. But at the time, I mean, this is basically pre-internet. This is 1998, really dating myself. I should have more berets than I actually do. No Just for Men yet.
Looking good, man. Looking good.
So yeah, the way it works up there is at the time, the city was full. And looking at that with the commercial real estate lens that I have now, the occupancy that we were experiencing in New York City at that time was just insane. It was not even in full 100 basis point things. I mean, we were talking like 70 basis points of vacancy. So, I mean, not even a full point, 99.4, 0.6, 0.3. So you had to have a broker to get an apartment. And we were pariahs. So the way that it works is you had to pay 1 month's rent, 1 month's security, and 17 to 19% of the annual rent. So essentially, we were the reason most people were moving to Queens or Brooklyn. So like, I wouldn't even tell people what I did, like, oh, I'm in the real estate. But on a 17 and 19% split, you have to think this is the .com boom. People are like, oh, my stock's going to be worth $40 million tomorrow.
Yeah.
Let me rent this loft in Soho for $15,000 a month. Do the math. We were doing like 3 or 4 of those a week. It was ridiculous. And when people said life was hard, this is my first real job. Well, we know what happened in 2001. And then actually prior to that, the bubble had burst. And between that and then 9/11, it kind of killed that market. And I ended up just thinking, okay, it's time to, because I had moved to Houston when I was 13 and I didn't like it. It was out in spring and just kind of a different place then and a little more enlightened now. But being a Dominican Jew in And, there was a lot of ignorance at that time. So I went back to New York, and then I came back to Houston, and that's when I got in the lending business. And I worked for my good friend Steve Kaufman, Zeus Mortgage. Now he runs Zeus Equity as well, and doing very well. But I ended up working there for about 5-6 years, and he kind of flipped that whole industry on its head. And prior to that, if you were a loan officer, you gave your cards to realtors, and they would give you referrals. Where you stood, there were 10 other loan officers behind you waiting for you to do something wrong, because realtors were very fickle with loan officers at the time. So he said, okay, now I'm going to flip this around and do a bunch of advertising. People will call to get pre-approved, and then we will give the referrals to realtors. And he was one of the first people to do that. It seems like a no-brainer now because everybody does that. I was the first person that he hired as this new position we called an inside loan officer. And then I became the director of commercial finance for Zeus. And then in 2009, I was recruited to the nation's largest brokerage, Marcus and Millichap, and where I sold apartment buildings for about 11 years. But in that time, I was involved in some pretty notable transactions, specifically the one that calls to mind, like the genesis of my new company. It was Grand Fountain and Palms at Cinco Ranch, the Cinco Ranch area of Houston. And I sold the pair separately. It wasn't one portfolio sale, but we're talking $54 million. And I watched my client, who through that process became a very, very dear friend and mentor of mine. In fact, I just got back from Detroit for his wedding. Very, very good friend of mine. And I really was able to see the whole process. I curated the unit mix on both of those. In fact, Grand Fountain is a marvel of a building, in that Mark Casey from Casey & Associates, who's a very, very good architect. The data showed that basically a connected garage there was a huge delta between a connected garage and not. So that building has a connected garage in every single apartment. And some of those buildings are 3 stories tall. We ended up with 21 or 23 floor plans on 198 units, which is insane. But that's because of that. And Jay made a lot of money. He did 221D4 loans on those, which if you have the patience to close that loan, it's worth doing. But it takes about 14 months. It's a lot of brain damage. But I want to say it's 13% down or 12. It's a minimal down payment to do that loan. So he came to the table for the pair for probably around $4 million. And when we sold them, he made 16. I'm like, oh my God, this is profitable. I mean, that's goes without saying, but the time is just murder. I mean, that's 3 years each project, 3.5, really. They're talking 7 years for both of those projects. And that's financial musical chairs. That music stops, you're done. You got millions on the ground making you nothing. And it got a little scary there. We sold it to the Pillar, which is they're a hedge fund. You're a hedge fund or a pension fund. And I did a really nice video on it. And Mark, the guy who was heading that fund, he loved the building. And we were able to hold the line. But it got a little dicey there at the end, because here comes Marty Fine with his project. Here comes Davis Development with their project. And all of a sudden, it's, that concession war.
Yeah.
So we held the line and sold it at a 4.25 cap. But I've thought there's got to be a better way to do this. How do we do this faster? The profitability is there, but the timeline is off. So I started looking at modular construction, and the quality is just not there. I mean, there are plenty of hardworking, honest people living in mobile homes. There's nothing wrong with a mobile home. If you're a landlord, there is something wrong with a mobile home, because the quality of it is going to deteriorate rapidly. Not to mention whether if it's on wheels, it might not be simple real estate. There's a lot of problems with that. So that's when I discovered container homes that have both the modularity, if that's a word, but I can control the quality inside. And that's kind of was the genesis of it. And, I can't say enough good things about Marcus and Millichap. I learned all of what I know, on the finance side, but I cannot credit them enough. But my focus had shifted, and Marcus and Millichap is real estate basketball. Stats are all you got. Putting the numbers up, and it's sprinting a marathon. As an agent, if you're walking into somebody's office trying to secure a 7 or 8 figure transaction, you better know what you're talking about. I was at a point where I could drive down any street in Houston, point to a multifamily building, tell my regional manager who owned it, who he bought it from, what the current rents are, what the concessions are. And we passed 20 buildings on the way to a meeting. And I could tell you all of that information because to secure 7 and 8 figure assets, you have to be an expert. And this is a huge one. So that comes with the sacrifice. And there are some agents who have figured that out. It's not something I was ever able to do with a team, but it's an up at dawn, leave. I mean, I never saw my house while the sun was up. And I did it for 11 years. And just kind of my passion for it just kind of went away in that aspect. I'm a real estate person. I don't wake up and go to work. I just get up and do what I do. And I mean, actually, I did not put this on earlier, but see, sure.
Coffee is for closers. That's right.
Coffee for closers only. Put that coffee down. Anyway, that's how it started, where we need to shorten this time frame. And then I started this company like basically during the pandemic, because who does that? Who's got 2 thumbs and does that? This guy. Because it's just wrong what's happening right now, in my opinion. We're all told since we're children that the American dream is owning your own home. Well, you cannot box with God, as they say. How is a fireman and a nurse or teacher and a hardworking people, how are they going to out-negotiate Goldman Sachs? They're not. And I can't blame the sellers. Like we were talking about this earlier. I mean, You have some guy handing you a bag of money for more than you're asking and with no contingency. And on the other side, you have a hardworking couple with an FHA loan that may or may not close in 45 days. Whose money you take? I get it. But what happens to those people? Where's their American dream? And the homes that I build are extremely affordable, and they're basically better than a traditionally built home in every measurable metric. They're stronger. They're more affordable. When we're talking container homes, there's a difference between a container home and a tiny home. Yes, they're both made from containers, but I can do a single. In fact, I'm building a single family home. We're in the middle of planning for it up in New Caney. That's going to be 4 containers. It will have a front porch and a covered back patio. It's 2,000 square feet, and we're actually building up negative space in between them. So if we have one here, another one here, we build that space out in between them. And upstairs, there's another one that kind of bridges that gap. And then the other one kind of hangs off. And so it's an affordable home. It's built to last. It's something that people can afford. You know, normally when you hear the words affordable housing, there's usually some government entity involved scrutinizing people's income and that. This is just an affordable home. Now, where a lot of the disconnect goes with the affordability of these is the design. If you start doing crazy cantilever designs where one's hanging out over the front, no, that looks like the container on top is sitting on the one on the bottom, but it's not. There's a whole steel scaffolding that goes in there. So as long as the design, like my clients who are building that house for up in Bikini, a 2,000 square foot house, they wanted that. So a way to do that, the reason why those 2 homes sit like they're the 2 sit on the bottom and this one sits on the top, the one sitting on the top, it still hooks up at the corners. Essentially, in a nutshell, to do a good design that's affordable with container homes, you have to let a container be. If you start doing things where they're not stacking the way they stack them on ships, that gets expensive. If you're taking out an entire wall of a container, yeah, you can do that. But you have to put very expensive I-beams back in it. So as long as you have the design in mind to where it will save money, it will be more affordable than a traditionally built home.
Yeah. Let me jump in here. So you went from the residential in New York, and then you went into, was it residential lending and then commercial lending, right? Okay. So you were in that. I was in the same space in 04, 05, 06. I was doing single family residential loans, and that was the heyday of the refi boom and all the things. We had a very similar project, broker who was also advertising in the San Antonio market, and we were doing mostly refis though at the time. And then you got into the commercial side. So was there a reason you didn't stay on the debt side or the debt team whenever you moved from the single family or the commercial lending side to Marks and Millichap? Because they have in-house debt, right?
They do. One of the best in the nation. So yeah, Marks and Millichap Capital. They're great. I've worked with some guys, my good friend Pete Dunn. It's a weird thing to say because we're good friends, but no kidding. I mean, he is literally one of the best mortgage bankers in the country. I mean, the guy is just a beast. I mean, he's done loans for clients that I referred him to. He's not at M&M anymore, but he was there for a long time. And then he wanted to move to Austin, and the Austin office this wasn't a fit for him, but he's out on his own, doing great. And he made some great people there. But the thing was, is if you think about the time, I hung in there because Steven and I were really good friends, and I really enjoyed the culture, and it's just a great company. But that was 07 and 08. That was a nuclear winter of land.
Yeah.
So when Marcus and Millichap called, at the time, I didn't even know who M&M was. And then I Googled, okay. And they're like, no, we want you to come work here. I'm like, okay. And I went with a pretty heavy heart, really. I had to tell Steven, I'm like, man, I got an opportunity of a lifetime, man. I got to go.
Yeah.
And, it is what it is, business, but we're still very good friends. And that was at the time we started our charity. And we did that for 10 years. Then it just kind of ballooned out of control. The last 4 years, we threw Houston's largest Halloween party, twice at Minute Maid Park and twice at Dynamo Stadium, and gave away about $1 million.
What's the name of the charity?
Oh, do I still have a charity? No, we had to shut it down.
Okay.
It just became a job because we kind of understand now. I mean, it's real easy to be sanctimonious about it. Be like, why are you making money doing a charity? Well, because you can't do that much work, because we were a 100% volunteer organization. Nobody drew a salary from it in the entire time that we did it. We would get sponsors to pay for the stuff that we need, like renting out Minute Maid Park, Dynamo Stadium, and the DJ, and all that kind of stuff. But then we planned a party for about 6 months, and then the next day after the party, when you came to the party, we wouldn't figure out who we were going to help until the last week, because bad things happen to good people all the time, unfortunately. That week, we coordinate with local news stations, stuff like an apartment fire, tenant didn't have renter's insurance, stuff like that, got hit by a drunk driver. And then sometimes it was really awful. Somebody's kid got killed and they don't have the money to pay for the funeral. We just show up and be like, all this is paid for. It's a very unique experience to put a smile on a mother's face and bury a child. That kind of intimacy only comes from doing that. And I won 2015 Houston Humanitarian of the Year for that work, and it was very rewarding. But it got to the point, it's just after 10 years, I just couldn't do it anymore. But it was like, 10 years, we did it for a decade.
Yeah.
Apart, but it was great. But getting back, so that's when I joined Marcus and Millichap, because Zeus, I kind of really specialized in multifamily. Even when I was doing residential loans, most of them were like fix and flip loans, either the original hard money to get the house fixed and then we'd refi them, or their buyer would come finance it with us. So it was all very investor centric. So I had that lens already. So it was a pretty easy transition to multifamily investment sales.
Yeah. Well, the whole idea, right, with the show, we're just talking about investments and how they're working. So you transition out of the multifamily. I cover multifamily quite a bit. We don't need to dive into that. You're working on a very unique asset class that not many people have exposure to. And so, like I was telling you a minute ago, like I've seen some of the end product. I've seen some unique things that have been put up, not maybe necessarily the same focus because the cantilever deal. It's like they're trying to make a statement architecturally with what they're building. So you got into this, and just to clarify, sounds like to me, you recognized a kind of a dysfunctional marketplace where you've got the iBuyers. I assume is who you're talking about. You've got like the big names going around buying up huge chunks of property, the Blackstones or those guys. So that puts mom and pop homeowner in a position where they can't afford some of their houses, right? Or somewhere to live. So just tell me why, or even how you started to build your very first container home. How did you even get to that point? Was it personal use? You like, I wanted to go just try this. I'm going to go buy a container.
It's funny. I wrestle with telling the story because there's a great quote that says, success, although it loves a witness, failure can't exist without them. And my first development, I went down in flames. It was bad. It was the wrong partner. He turned out to be a crook. And it was time to order the containers. And I knew this guy. I mean, it really came out of left field. Our wives were friends. We had gone on vacations together. And there's still parts I just really don't. I've wrestled with them for years now and trying to figure out motivations. And it's just greed, really. It was in the middle of the pandemic. We were building a 40 at the time. It was the largest multifamily development in the country. And, this is during the pandemic. Everything is spiking. And I'm ringing alarm bells like, guys, the market doesn't care what we pay for this. If these things keep getting out of control like this, we're in trouble. And it wasn't that bad. But things were going up.
Just for clarification, you said it was a 40 unit?
48.
48 unit.
48 unit building.
Largest by what metric? Largest container home?
Multifamily building made from shipping containers.
Got it. Okay. Thanks.
There have been bigger ones since. Again, I mean, I knew him and I didn't see this coming. It's funny. It's the shot that you don't see coming that knocks you down. Anyway, it was time to order the containers. They had spiked out of control at the time. A container right now, one trip. You have to use one trips with containers. This is a pretty declarative statement, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. Anybody who is building container homes that you can modify these and use them for storage and stuff like that. But anybody building a home with a used container, that's a pretty unscrupulous move because they can make you sick. So, because of what they carry.
Literally one of my questions for you.
Yeah. So it has to be a one trip.
Yeah.
Or you have to replace the floor. You have to do a whole lot of testing on it and sandblasting. It's not worth it. Just buy the new container.
Well, so define one trip. What does that mean?
One trip. So there are no containers made in the Western Hemisphere. 98% of them are made in China, 1% are made in Indonesia, and 1% are made in Vietnam. You cannot get a brand spanking new container in the Western Hemisphere. They're all going to come made in China, take one trip across the ocean, and then they're new. So anyway, it was time to buy the containers, and we were searching, trying to find a good deal. You needed a lot of them. And he found this really good deal. He sent me the invoice. I said, wow, that's a really good deal. We should just buy all of them. And we did. And he sent me the invoice that they had given to him. Well, the invoice was in his name. And he turned around, sold those containers right back to the company and absconded with the money. Yeah.
That's your first entry into the container world.
Baptized by fire, bro.
Oh my goodness, man.
It was awful.
Yeah, that's rough.
Lost my life.
So what's your takeaway from that? I mean, there's multiple lessons learned, I'm sure.
First of all, don't ever pay an invoice that's not in your name. That's first. And again, I mean, I know better, but had a personal relationship with this guy, but it doesn't matter because business is business. And I guess his take on that is great line from that movie, Ronin. Everybody's your brother until the rent's due. And it's sad because I see a lot more of that. I'm just built the way I'm built. I got to sleep at night. I see people doing horrible things like that. I hear about it. I have friends and people who have been taken advantage of the way that I was. And it's sad, but you have to just still stick it. Principles, I believe the true test of a man's principles is when they're inconvenient and you stick to them. And yeah, that just knocked me way down. And
how long ago was this? 2020?
Yeah, around October.
Were you still at M&M then? And you were doing this on the side as development?
I was until July. That was a tough month. So I got married on June 27th and moved into a new house with my wife on the 1st of July. And I got a call and I kind of joke about this with Ford over there, the poor guy. I almost felt as bad for him in this situation because he calls me. And of course, there was the pandemic. I hadn't really been going to the office. And, it was just a sticky time to be a broker because if you know M&M guys, you're on the phone. You are calling 50 calls a day, sometimes 100. Well, it's a weird thing to be calling, hey, how you doing with your property? Do you want to sell your property in the middle of a pandemic? It was just a tough thing to do. So I kind of, obviously, after 11 years, I had a real tight circle of really good clients that I was really keeping in contact with. But my numbers were way down because my focus had kind of shifted to my development. So got married, moved into the new house. 6 days later, Ford calls me and says, well, we love you, but your numbers aren't there. We were going to part ways. And it was an amicable thing because my heart wasn't really in it anymore. He kind of did.
Yeah.
Then 4 months later, I got robbed of my life savings because it was more than the draw. But I was like, oh, that's such a good deal. Let's just buy the containers. It was more than the draw. I did it with my own money because I was going to get it back in the draw. But when that happened, the whole thing went bad. It was a humbling experience.
So what transpired after that? Because obviously now you're kicking it. You're doing some business here.
It's been really tough, but it's turned the corner now, thank God. So I had a client. I had a property on the market. He was really interested in what I was doing. And I brought that listing with me. I had a great relationship with him. And I just hung my license with a good friend of mine. It turns out, I didn't know it at the time, but I'm still active with JLA, the commercial group at JLA Realty, which is kind of a local Houston thing. But that's my good friend, Mike and Kimberly Bush. They're the brokers. I just hung my license with them. But it turns out they have over 2,000 agents, and we are the commercial team. So where if there's a commercial deal, it gets referred to the commercial team. My client said, look, Juan, he knew what was going on. And he's like, listen, I want to do this. I think that what you're doing is really smart. I have 3 acres in a place called Algoa, Texas, which is the one-horse town. I don't think it has a street light. It's like, anyway, but it's in between Alvin and Santa Fe.
Yep.
Let's just build a model and let's just start selling these. And at the time, I was still reeling from everything that was going on. So I said, yeah, okay, let's do it. So we started that company, and it was going great at first. And we built 2 models, and we ended up selling about 4 containers. But I never got my partnership paperwork. I was hypersensitive about that. And I'm like, guys, where's my paperwork? What's going on? How, they were paying me, and it's fine. But I learned, if it's not on paper, it doesn't matter,
Yeah.
And I'd be like, guys, where's my paperwork? And then we had our sign. It was just like a banner that was on our fence. And we had a windstorm, tore the whole fence down. I guess I really secured that thing to the fence. And I'm like, guys, we got to get the sign fixed. And then I tore some of the fence down. It was nothing. It was like $1,100 a day. Nothing. Another week went by. Hey, guys, what's going on here? Then springtime came around. And my guys, hey, we need landscaping. Here's 3 quotes. We're going to send somebody. Okay. What's up with my paperwork? Oh, no, we're working. This is going on 6 months. And then I had 2 guys ready to go.
Like buyers or?
2 buyers. Yeah.
Buyers. Okay.
2 buyers ready to go. We're about to do, their container home. And one of my partners, he was like the main guy that I talked to. There were 2 other guys who were kind of silent partners. And he's like, Juan, just get these 2 containers sold. Just get these 2 orders in, and I'll get their attention back on the business. I'm like, what? I have a 3-hour round trip commute. I was living in the Heights at the time.
Yeah.
I was like, that's not enough to keep their attention on our business? Like, what are you talking about? And he's like, oh, no, don't worry. Just get these 2 sold, and we'll be back on track. All right, man. What's up with my paperwork? Oh, we're working. Okay. So then 2 weeks later, he comes by with a builder. And at this point, this place is completely overgrown. It looks terrible. We have no sign on the business. Sales have kind of fallen off other than these 2 guys who are ready to sign a contract. And he brings this buyer on a Thursday. And the guys, which showing around. I'm like, why are you bringing a builder here? I mean, he's a builder. If he likes this idea, he's just going to steal it. He's not going to buy a container home. He's a builder. And so I'm showing him around and, telling him about container homes. And he asked me my background. Tell him about my pretty long history in real estate. Marcus Millichap, 200 million in sales, all that. He kind of looks around this derelict property and kind of insinuates like I'm lying. And he's like, well, if that's your background, what are you doing here? And cordially answered his question about, I'm principled in doing this. I think what I'm doing is more than just making money, and we're providing housing for hardworking people. But in my head, I'm like, good question. And the next day, I was just fed up and filed my LLC, found my yard, and walked out the door with all the clients. And because I called the clients, actually, one of them came in and they're like, well, what's up? You ready to get the contract ready? I'm like, listen, look at this place. I can't stay here. I'm responsible for all the buildings you see. My partners are responsible for what's outside. And I don't know who they're going to replace me with. So I need a week to get my ducks in a row. I've already found a yard. So you can stay here and roll the dice, or you just come with me. And they're like, no, let's go. We want to work with you. So because they never gave me any paperwork, I really didn't feel like, and not only that, it basically abandoned me in the middle of nowhere, wouldn't even pay for anything. And that was the deal. So I walked out and I started Uncontained Living May 23rd, 2022.
Nice. We're about a year.
Just over a year, bootstrapped it, it's literally bootstrapped. I did it, these hands and the gray matter between my ears. And, it hasn't been easy, but it's turned the corner now. Just got my plans today for the beach house we're doing. But I have my plans on the one in New Caney in about 2 weeks. And we got a duplex we're doing in Austin. And I have 2 sitting there that I just built spec that are ready to go.
You were able to do this all over Texas. Are you focusing on Texas right now, or like what?
I have 4. I'm waiting to hear back from my logistics team on what it's going to cost to get them to Nova Scotia, British Columbia. We're doing 4 up there.
That's wild. Yeah. So how are you able to do that remote sort of? You just hire a crew up there? Or are you just going to go with a crew? Like, what are you doing?
We're talking about 2 different products. So if I'm building something like the house in New Caney or the duplex or the beach house, I've got about a 2.5 hour radius around you.
Okay.
But a single container home where I even have one. I don't know if you saw that, it's pretty prominently displayed on my website. It's called the Victor, and it's on wheels and has a rooftop deck.
Oh, yeah.
The deck is expensive because it has to fold down. Those are custom-made rails that fold down to where it can still go down the road and violate height restrictions.
Yeah.
So that works really well where I can just, to my logistics team, I can tow that up to anywhere. And with it being on wheels, it usually lets you get around any permits that are needed. And depending on the municipality, a container, even if it's on a permanent foundation, which would be pads, basically 6 pads, 2 at the corners, 2 in the middle. And there would be a steel plate at the top of like a little riser, and it's welded to the plates. Well, you get a cutting wheel and you can go and cut the welds.
Yeah.
You can just pick it up and move it. So as far as fee simple real estate is concerned, that is a permanent foundation. But you can pick them up and move them. I mean, railroad ties work really well, very cheap. You can do it. You need 4 of those. That's $40 a piece of McCoys. Your foundation's $160.
I had a full house moved from San Antonio, and it's an interesting story. It was in a nice part of San Antonio. The guy that I hired to move it was at a Corpus. He ended up stealing the house, literally stole a house, drove it down to Natalia, Texas. And I show up the day he was supposed to move it to the north side over by Canyon Lake.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, where the hell are you going, man? And so I have to follow him all the way down. He parks it on a lot that he owned, and he was going to sell this house. I was like, man, this is crazy. So it was one of the craziest stories that I have in real estate and the whole like thing that goes through it. But the guy that I hired, Dotson House Moving out of San Antonio, I will sing their praises forever.
Yeah.
He had a massive, I think he built a specialized truck that goes in and can get underneath the house, pick it up and do all these things. But yeah, seeing those things move, I can only imagine how much easier it is to move a storage container, man.
Well, yeah. What's great about it is they're still 8 feet wide.
Yeah.
So there's no wide loads. So we put the condenser for the mini split system on the back.
Yeah.
So never exceeding length or width. There's no special permit. In fact, when I sell the ones that are on a trailer for this specific purpose, it's 2 bills of sale. It's one for the trailer and then one for the container. They're not really meant to be taken off when we build them like that. But essentially, that just makes it so where the trailer is the trailer and the container is just cargo.
Yeah. What is that, like on a 5th wheel or something? You just pull it?
We manufacture a custom-made chassis where it's like kind of like RV'd where it sits lower. Because if you just put it on a flatbed, it'll be up to your chest, and you got to walk up some serious steps. And then if you put that with the rooftop deck, I mean, you're scared of heights. You're not going on that deck. I mean, you're 20 feet in the air. Your eye line is probably 20 or probably 15 feet in the air. So these sit low. There's a platform on the front where the stairs can go if you want the rooftop deck. And there's a gooseneck assembly in front of that. So this can be towed with a dually.
Yeah.
1-ton truck is fine. You don't need a semi-truck to pull them around.
I'm looking at the one you have. It looks awesome.
There's no comparison with an RV. Because an RV weighs maybe 9,000 pounds. This thing will weigh about 16. So
yeah, no, it's awesome.
We're proud to be sponsored by Ridgeline Investment Group. Ridgeline has a track record of transacting more than $53 million in assets throughout Texas. Ridgeline is currently looking to acquire 100 to 200 unit Class B multifamily communities between 5 and 20 million in San Antonio, Temple, Waco, Tyler, and other Texas secondary markets. To learn more about Ridgeline Investment Group, visit www.ridgelineig.com.
Let's talk nuts and bolts then, because I'm curious. My background has been fixing, flipping houses, right, for like the last 12, 13 years. And just the contractor process and being burned many, many times by contractors, I got so fed up with it. And so we shut that down. My wife still does some of that. And she closed her first one today, actually. First sale of her first rehab. So congrats to you, little lady.
congrats.
But what I started looking at was manufactured homes on lots. Like I wanted to buy a bunch of land on the outskirts, Seguin and surrounding areas, cut them up and then put mobile homes on them. Like it's a fixed product. I know that it's going to be done in a warehouse. It's going to be brought to site, ready to go. I don't have to do anything other than, septic and maybe put in a driveway or something. But so now I look at this and I'm like, well, maybe this is an even better solution for that type of thing. So I've ran the numbers. I understand the numbers on the land acquisition and all of that for the model that I was looking at. But I'm very curious for a product like this, what can I buy one for? And then like, how long does it take? Just give me some, I guess, basics on the process.
Sure. Our manufacturing facility right now is pretty much just a yard. We have 3.5 acres, but my construction manager, he's a blessing. He really is. And what's funny is his name is Jesus. And I always say he's my own personal Jesus.
Yeah.
But he's been building homes for over 30 years. We have a bandwidth of probably about 30, 35 a month. We'll get there. But it takes about 6 weeks to build one. We do have models on our website, but they're really there just kind of as a guide. In my experience, when you throw the phone book of options at people, they tend to just get what I call analysis paralysis.
Yep.
So any one of those models, we can start with 59. That's for a 40-foot container. That is a studio layout. Pretty simple build. Still very nice. I mean, just because it's our base model doesn't mean it's basic. I mean, it's really nice house. And then they kind of go up from there. Our most expensive model is 129, I think. And that one's just, I mean, it's just beautiful. On the trailer with the rooftop deck, custom spiral staircase, custom railings, washer and dryer, beautiful marble surrounding the shower or bathtub. These things are so trendy now where you have the rain shower plus the horizontal
jets shooting you from all sides. Yeah.
I mean, other than coal miners, I mean, who is that dirty? Come on. But it is nice.
Yeah.
So there's that. And then we have like quartz countertops, beautiful cabinets, fireplaces, crown molding where we actually put like LED lights. I take a lot of design cues from boats, yachts.
Yeah.
Both in design and function, because I can make these completely off grid. And if you think about like a nice like 45, 50-foot catamaran, that's basically a floating off grid tiny home, luxury tiny home, $200,000 catamaran. You don't want, those things start at $500,000. But yeah, we take a lot of design cues from that. But I think a really well-appointed one where it's going to stop making sense, landlord wise, I would say probably around 75, 80. That's like granite countertops, nice cabinets. I have one that we just built, which is basically our base model, the Lucy, but it has some upgrades, and then it has a fireplace. It has a little bit of a bigger kitchen, bigger windows. It's upgraded to a 1-bedroom layout instead of a studio, pretty much a fiberglass surround shower.
Yeah.
Very comparable to a mobile home and less cost than a mobile home and way higher quality.
Yeah.
Where I see a lot of people looking at these, but I think given the novelty of them right now, I think they're going to, as this continues to become a lot more ubiquitous, is the Airbnb market, because this is still going to be considered a unique stay.
Yeah.
And I have one that we're doing for my client up in Waco. And my wife loves that Magnolia table show.
Oh, yeah.
From what I hear, those people are kind of pariahs in Waco because everybody's property taxes are going up, which in my opinion is not the way to look at that. Your property taxes are going up, then you have unrealized gains that you can know.
Exactly. Yeah.
Us real estate people know that, but junkie homeowners just mad he's got to pay the higher bill. But we were going to go there. It's booked for 3.5 months, lunch and dinner. Those aren't people in Waco. Waco is almost kind of becoming the new Fredericksburg.
Yeah. And
then everyone's go to the silos. So we pulled the Air DNA report, which I'm sure you're familiar with. Anybody who's not familiar with that, that's the basically Airbnb's vacation rental analytics. And any given zip code will give you all of the average daily rate, occupancy, cleaning fees, that kind of stuff. And a unique stay with Airbnb is going to get 35 to 40% more than a regular Airbnb. So this guy, between the land, the deck, and the container home, he's going to be all in on this thing, maybe call it 110. And that has projected NOI of $48,000, which we are north of.
Close to 48%. Yeah.
Almost 48.
Yeah.
If it was 100, it'd be 48. But
yeah.
When I first saw that number, as you can probably imagine, I have a pretty complicated financial model. I was like, there's something's wrong with my model. And I pretty much went blind that day, Randall, because I went through every single cell in that model to check my formulas. And they were right. And I'm like, oh my God, this is true. It is pro forma, it is a projection, but it is not based on, conjecture. I mean, it's based on hard data. And I think that market it's too apparent to be denied. But I think that where real opportunity lies is because, again, I've spoken to this many times, during this conversation, that these are better, they're stronger, they're cheaper, they're built faster. Why aren't they everywhere? And the answer is financing.
That's what I was going to ask you about.
Here's something that a lot of people don't know. All of the usual suspects, Fannie, Freddie, FHA, VA, they will all do container homes. However, they have an extremely prohibitive caveat that says all of the comps have to be container homes. So there's only two ways to do that. You can be extremely myopic in your market. I buy one on one block, I have to buy one down the street or across the street or 2 blocks over and sell them owner finance, which means you pretty much got to do them all cash. Maybe you can do a wrap, but for simplicity's sake, do it all cash. Okay. Not terrible, because I think that when you accentuate outdoor space, as far as in the beginning, if a appraiser looked at it, he'd make his eyes cross. But I think it's very plausible to do even a single container home. Like I said, you're going to be probably around 70 on the container home. There are plenty of lots to be found in secondary and tertiary markets with utilities, well and septic. You can find something with well and septic for 30. Then you've got the house and you've got the deck. But picture you have the container, then we do the front porch, the same dimensions as the container, 8 feet wide, 40 feet long. Then we do a rooftop deck on top of the container, but then we extend that deck to come out over the
bottom deck.
Yeah. Well, you can get very creative with that. I'm talking with UK Sales. They're a sail maker. And what we're going to do in Waco is the part that extends over the deck, we're going to make that out of the same material of the netting of the front catamaran boats. Mm-hmm. So that gives you basically a 40-foot by 8-foot hammock, but it's not as soft as a hammock. You can still walk. Have you ever been on a catamaran?
Yeah.
Trampolines,
Yep.
So it's like that. And then we do hanging baskets below. But the coolest part is you can put a hot tub on it. It'll carry the weight, no problem.
Yeah.
And all in on that, you'd probably be somewhere around 120, something like that. I think I could sell that house easily, owner finance. Because again, the livability of that, yes, you have 320 square feet of finished space, but you have 1,280 square feet of livable space that you're going to use.
Yeah.
So I think, this is yet to be proven, but I don't think I'm wrong. And I'm not looking at it through a novice lens either. I think you sell that house all day for 180, 200, depending on 220. So let's just say for easy math, let's just say you're in it for 100 and you sell 200 owner finance. You take 20% down, that reduces your basis to 60,000, but you have a note for 160,000. At 9%, your return on that 60,000 is north of 24%.
Yeah.
Well, if you get 8 like clockwork, you get a moniker like the Oracle of Omaha. This is 3 times that secured by real estate. So once you have enough comps in any given market, people can refi and that's your exit. So a better way to do it, a lot more capital intensive. And unfortunately, with what I've been through over the last couple of years, it's not really an option for me. But to do a subdivision, you build the first 5. And my company is basically a vertically integrated real estate development. We can do any. If you want to take 10 acres, 100 acres, make it a subdivision, we can do that. No problem. To go in, the same thing is like what you would normally do a subdivision, but you can get a lot higher density because these are a small footprint. 6,000 square foot lot is usually the standard in most counties for higher density stuff, unless we're talking condos or townhomes. But if you did it that way, but I think that an even better way to do it is to go into an existing RV park, buy the RV park, replat it to where each pad site is its own lot, bring in the container homes, put them on permanent foundations, and you can sell them off fee simple real estate. So even if you're not going to do that, or you're going to sell them off, just retail home sales, anytime you have multiple exits, it's just smart to do it that way. In my opinion, it's a little more cost intensive, but not that much more. And then the HOA that's formed takes care of the septic tank, the well, the gates, all the common area stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that is a very profitable, viable thing because it enables you to essentially have the cash flow from the existing park while you're getting your ducks in a row of it's more legal on the horizontal stuff. You're not putting in utilities and that kind of thing. But while you're doing that, all the containers can be built.
Yeah.
You just drop them. The same as the case with if you were going to do just like what we were talking about earlier, where you're just doing a subdivision. You can just be building your heart. Because again, once you're done with construction with traditional multifamily, then you got to lease it up. So it's still sitting there with all of that. So essentially, I think that theoretically, we can take a deal from dirt to done that will yield higher returns than traditional multifamily in a third of the time. And that is a pretty compelling argument to walk away from, the largest commercial brokerage in the nation. That's the bond villain plan, if you know.
Yeah.
I think that is an extremely viable strategy, and that you get higher yields, your construction timeline is shrunk significantly, and you have multiple exits for your capital because you could just run that as a multifamily deal. You don't. Now, the trick is why you're able to do that is obviously on the horizontal, like your civil and all that kind of stuff, that's going to be commercial. But as far as your vertical codes, as long as you don't go over a duplex, because the new IBC codes, anything north of 3, because financing is 5 units, right? Code is 3. So the second you have 3 units on any one lot, that triggers all the commercial codes. There are many, but where the brick wall is, where it's just cost prohibitive, is the sprinkler.
Yeah.
Because that's just the pump is $10,000. When I looked at it 3.5 years ago, it was $10,000 just for the pump. Never mind all the red steel and MEP guys. And the fire suppression, that is almost outside of MEP. That's a whole other engineer. So the cost involved with that. So if you do your lots to where they're either single family or duplexes, you never trigger any of that commercial code on your vertical. So that gives you such freedom to just do things as fast as you would a regular house. So again, it's all theoretical at this point, but not for long.
So there's a development here in San Antonio. We did this thing they called it Shark Tank, but it was like the Mayor's Housing Summit a few years ago. And I pitched this deal there. And another guy that was presenting, he had this tiny homes project on one lot. It was a standard 50, 125 deep lot, and he put 5 little houses on it. And so because they were separate, he didn't have to sprinkle it. But the big question was like, how are you going to get fee simple? How are you going to do this? So you essentially had to replat anyway and do a condo regime on that one property, right? But it's zoned residential. So like, can you do it? There were a lot of questions around that. But the whole idea...
And as you know, condo docs are way more. Those CC&Rs are way more. I mean, it's just legal. It's not like you have to do it. You just write a check to an attorney. But it's a way bigger check to do a condo than a HOA for.
Yeah. It was an interesting deal. I guess the point was we're talking about some of these opportunities the way you see them. To me, again, so many things that I'm working on currently are clicking off in my mind because we are doing I don't know how much I can say because it's not launched yet and all the SEC docs aren't filed yet, but we are doing an owner finance play, right? We're acquiring properties and then owner financing them. And that delta I'm very familiar with. Very similar thing on the mobile home front that I looked at. It was like, okay, how can I create long-term consistent cash flows? So it brings me back to a land deal I looked at, right? Looked at a piece of land of 7 acres and it had a mobile home on it. There was a house on stilts. It was down by the waterfront. And my play was to put a bunch of RVs or small little like cool campsite style thing and then like maybe give it the feel of like it's a backyard in Austin type thing,
Very cool.
And so I came up against regulations just because the FEMA like flood codes where it was, I couldn't do that there. So I've looked at other land again, just trying to tie it into like what you're working on to see if this is like a viable thing that anyone listening can pick up and take with them. How do you deal with the water sewer? You said that these things are, if they're on wheels, are they self-contained? Like, is it like a mobile home or?
We can put gray and black water tanks on them, but of course, it's going to make the cost go up. But they can be hooked up to water and sewer just like any other house.
Okay.
Or we can RV hook. So it's really just up to them.
Yeah. So is it cost? So like, I want to buy one of these things and move it out to some land that I've got. Is the cost associated with moving it and getting it hooked up all inclusive, or is that like all bolt-on stuff?
I wish I could do that, but because we have such a large market, which basically is North America, I can't include.
You don't know what it's going to be like. Yeah.
In the price, we can always get a quote for that, depending on where it's going. And what's funny is, as I explain that to a lot of people, it seems like it's very kind of goes without saying. Well, why can't you just give me? Well, how could I? I mean, like I said, I'm going to Nova Scotia. in my pricing. I mean, that's crazy. But it's not that much. I mean, like to go to Nova Scotia, I think we're probably looking at like $6,000.
Yeah.
And then as far as when it gets there, it just depends on what we're doing. Is it going on a permanent foundation? If so, if it's local, we can do that. And usually a good rule of thumb is if there is city utilities, you need a permit.
Mm-hmm.
And if you need a permit, it just shrinks our radius because we have to build the foundation for you. And I mean, we can send out plans, but it takes a lot of attrition to find the right contract. Going into any market blind, trying to find a contract.
Yeah.
It's just a recipe for disaster in my opinion. That's why right now we're limited to, like I said, we got about a 2.5 hour radius outside the Houston area where we can just come out and build your house. Beyond that, if it's just the container, we're going to just say, if you want it on a permanent foundation, here are the plans, and you're going to have to get your own contract for that. But in most cases, like almost exclusively, all of the ones that I've done have been for like deer leases.
Yeah.
Thus far. Some of the nicest deer leases I've ever. I mean, it's ridiculous. I'm not a hunter, but I don't judge. I think if to go hunting and enjoy it, you have to go hunting like with your dad when you have an age that is a single digit number. Because I went when I was 14 and it was awful. But anyway.
No bias.
New York, man. I mean, look at those guns in New York,
right.
cops. I mean, it's whatever. So anyway, most of them have been deer leases. There's usually no permits involved and that kind of thing. But just because a permit is involved, what we need to kind of discover the due diligence of it is there are a lot of municipalities where this is going to qualify kind of like the way an ADU would, additional dwelling unit.
Yeah.
If it's under 400 square feet, they don't care. Some do. And if they do, and it's outside our area, and they need inspections on framing, wiring, plumbing, all that kind of stuff, it's really going to be tough because we're building it at our site. So beyond that radius, it's just tough to do because we can't fly my crews out to Vegas or Joshua Tree. A lot of these are going to Joshua Tree in California. But that makes it a little problematic. But it's not anything that we can't work through. It just depends. But setup costs, I mean, it's going to be pretty much the same as any whatever well and septic costs.
Sure.
If it's raw. And it can vary. I mean, here in the Houston area, like up in New Caney, we have quotes for the well and septic right at like 27. It's not bad. That's the well and the septic.
Mm-hmm.
In Waco, well, if you can get a permit. So it's just hard to dig out there. Dirt's.
Yeah. The reason I was asking is because I looked at 60 acres. It was on water and we could not get water to it. The allocation of water from the city or municipality or the private water supplier where it was, they just have so many developments and neighborhoods going up. But again, this type of thing, putting a couple of these things together and putting them out there and then just renting them out.
And on a big enough development, if you want to talk offline about this, like when we did Grand Fountain and Palms at Cinco Ranch, I mean, we put in, I say we, I mean, I was the broker on it, but I was way more involved than the normal broker. And we put our own water treatment plant. And what's cool about those is you just get bonds once it's built and you get completely 100% reimbursement for that.
And when I found out the mud and like why everything in Houston is on a mud and how those things are priced and how you get paid for it, it blew my mind how much money on the back end side.
Yeah, it's actually very, very profitable.
For sure.
Extreme. Like I have a deal that me and Jay are looking at down like San Antonio Bay area, Lashes, Sargent, that way.
Yeah. 532
acres in the Eagle Forest Shelf, over 4,000 linear feet of ocean frontage with mineral rights and 84 million in bonds ready to go for the water treatment plant with mineral rights. 16,000 acres, that's a deal. But what's great about that is the bonds are in place because that is not for the novice is putting those bonds together. But my buddy Pete Dunn can do that all day.
Yeah, that's an interesting deal. Yeah, what's happening with that?
Yeah, well, we're going to look at it. They just got married, so he's flying in next week. We're going to go look at that.
Nice.
It's not bad. I mean, it's a big deal. 532 acres and 400 next to it. And you can buy the whole thing, which is like 900 acres. That's huge. I don't know if that market has a demand for that many houses, but the 500 for sure. And the mean, 16,000 an acre, 4,000 feet of linear footage. What's that water study that you have to do? Not wet water. What am I thinking of? Anytime we do coastal.
No, I haven't bought anything on the coast. Just all lake and water.
Yeah, it's a long, arduous process. That's already done. So we'll look at that. But just to let you know, I'm looking at this deal. We'll see whether they have like 26 cabins that we're talking about. Really cool project up in Livingston. We're talking about 26 that they want from me. Hopefully that goes through. And but they did their own wastewater for it's a 232 unit RV park. It's ridiculous. Oh my God, that thing is awesome. But their pool is almost, I think it's got to be over an acre. The pool is so big, it's running water. It's awesome. But they did their own wastewater, and their total capital stack on that thing is like $9 million.
Yeah.
So, and that's including the water plant. So when we did at Grand Fountain and Palm Cinco Ranch, I want to say it was like 2.6, but with 100% reimbursement. You build it, you put bonds in place, and you get it all back, and you can kind of be your own contractor on that and get paid for it. So bonds are great. It's just you got to know how to navigate those waters.
Yeah,
fraught with peril. Sorry, I just read a book about Magellan, so I'm very nautically minded right now.
Yeah, I know. They picked up on a few of those with the yachtsman's quote. Well, Juan, look, man, it's been an interesting conversation. I again, on the investing front, for me, I'm constantly looking at things, and with the multifamily market in the state that it's in currently and the high cost of debt, creating barriers to entry.
And see, that's what's so interesting about like that exit of owner financing, which again, is a model you're familiar with. You can still have some arbitrage, especially with the low cost to build and collecting a big down payment that's going to reduce basis. You can still, again, with debt, as long as you have, your partial releases in there, you can owner finance it. And you can create that arbitrage and cash flow in a manner that is faster. And of course, the owner financing, for me, it's different because I'm building now. So I have warranties that I'm responsible for. But as the landlord, somebody calls you, oh, my toilet broke. I'm your bank. What are you calling me for? But you have none of those responsibilities and all cash flow in a third of the time, which I think that just has the propensity to almost kind of be the new darling in multifamily investing, because it just makes sense in so many different facets that I think that this is kind of coming out of the shadows now, especially once that critical mass of container home sales. This is the problem that's problematic. There are like Austin, ton of container homes in Austin. In most cases, the person who is building it are keeping it. So they're not trading. Not only that, like you can't really go into MLS at this point and query for a container home.
Yeah.
But as these become more and more ubiquitous, that problem's going to go away. And it's tough. But if I had $1, Randall, for every time somebody tells me, well, pioneers are the ones with arrows in their chest, I would respond the same way. I'm like, yeah, you're right. Or monuments and parks.
I want to say one thing just because it pops in my mind. So the model that I see that works, if you are going to go down that road of owner financing these things, and this is kind of the same thing that we're doing. It's either a fund model or you have family office or somebody with some money that is financing the acquisition. And then you have no issue with a due on sale clause like you do in some of these other wrap situations. And they know what they're getting. Maybe it's like a debt fund or an income fund and that sort of thing, unless you have a partner who has the capital and they're putting the money into the deal. The problem that I see with both sides of it, regardless of where the initial capital comes from, if it's your cash or if it's a fund or if it's a bank that's giving you the debt to buy it and then wrap it, is, and we didn't address it really. You talked about the mobility of these things. Once they are stuck to the ground, they have steel that you can just cut, right? So it's like, how do you address that concern would be one of my things. Because like I said, we're launching something now. It's based on single family houses, but there are still loan to value ratios that are of concern. Like we can't just go and fund $100,000 purchase and owner finance it for 120. We don't want to be 90% LTV with a fund loans or fund money.
Yeah.
And so, how would you do that in this situation? Like, how do you, one, make sure that your asset that's somewhat mobile is not going to move?
Fair question. Earlier, you were talking about a home. That is a crazy story that the house got stolen.
Yeah.
That was a permanent house, right?
It has pier and beam. So it's permanent as you get. Yeah.
You can pick up and move a pier and beam foundation in every state in this country.
Yeah.
Just the same. And this is going to fall in that exact category where, yeah, it's on a permanent foundation, but with a lot of skilled people. You're going to have a welder come out and cut the welds off. And it's not like somebody could back up to this thing and take it like a thief in the night. No, it's not that. It's a permanent foundation. I mean, I can almost say that in jest that you could cut it off, but it would kind of be the same thing as far as like what you were talking about, as far as a house can be moved, but it's still going to be permanent foundation as far as any appraiser or engineer is concerned, and by default bank is going to be concerned.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's an issue.
So have you looked at having either a money bags partner that's funding and financing that deal, or having like a fund that is doing that? Or are you relying on the end buyer financing the deal?
Right now, it's the latter. I've got a lot of brain damage partners right now.
Yeah.
I mean, I really enjoy my autonomy.
Yeah.
And have a lot of friends. They're syndicators and they love to beat their chest and like, oh, I have 2,500 units.
0.005%.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's like
60 billion assets under management.
Right. It's like, you don't own those. You're an admin for your investors. Calm down. You know? Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it's a pretty inflammatory statement to a lot of listening to this, but it is what it is. I mean, just the same way, running my company. I mean, there's sometimes weeks that go by, just like when I was at M&M. I would rather work 100 hours for myself and sometimes make nothing, steady paycheck, and I work for somebody else.
Yep.
I mean, if I walk into an office rental and somebody's like, Mr. Cuevas, we start work here at 9 o'clock, and I look at my watch and it's 9:03, no way.
Yeah.
Couldn't do it. And going that route with either syndication or, like you said, money bags partner or something like that, I answer to someone. Right now, I answer to my clients. Well, hold on. No. First, I answer to my wife. Then it's to my clients, and that's it. And I enjoy that almost to my detriment because, yeah, if I wanted to go do that, I probably could tomorrow.
Yeah.
But the thing is, also the novelty of this is when you're as passionate about it as I am, and having to go and convince somebody of something that my knowledge and experience tells me I'm not wrong. And I bet the farm that I'm not wrong. And I have to go and convince somebody to do that and poke all these holes in it based on, like, I love when people say, oh, well, I'm just playing devil's advocate. No, you're not. I mean, yes, to a point, but sometimes like people will be so conservative in the deal where, the market is 96% occupancy. They're going to arbitrarily call it 80. Expenses are, I don't know, $4 or $5 grand a door. Well, we're just going to underwrite it at 8. Well, why? Adjusting taxes, I get that. You always got to adjust the taxes on the current to make sure you're not upside down once counting your value. But beyond that, and I always made the argument as a broker, it's like, well, wait a second. You're buying this apartment building to raise rents, and it's a value add deal. So you're adjusting the taxes on the current, which was going to be in the next year, but you're not going to get any rent increases. It's stuff like that where you have to be conservative in your underwriting. I get that. But most of the time when I brought this, because I had a deal that was an awesome deal. It was a little outside the box, and I guess pun intended, an RV park, very unique RV park. We had these 2 lakes, and the guy had 400 people a day walking through his door, no vacation. So this was a master lease of 35 units on a 20-year lease, but nobody wanted to do it because of that. And he ended up just selling it. That kind of deal was, that was another time. In fact, that was the first time that I had to go through my whole financial model to make sure it was right, because after expenses, after debt service, cash on cash return was north of 45%.
That's insane.
It's insane. If I did 200 million in sales, I didn't track how many deals I underwrote. It's got to be over $1 billion. When it comes to underwriting, I just know what I'm talking about, just from repetitive practice of 11 years of doing it. And prior to that, 6 years of doing it. The number was right. And it was almost too good to be true. Like, it was like, there's no way. Nobody would be going to college. I'm like, well, these are the numbers. That equal sign is either right or it isn't. And in this situation, it is. Check it. And for whatever reason, it makes it to where, like I said, it's pioneers are the ones with arrows in their chest. But, at the same time, though, I just need one of these to go. And I'm right back where beyond,
Yeah. Proof of concept, man. I find it fascinating still. Like I said, just from the type of product that it is, it's very unique. I would be curious, and I don't know if you want to answer this, but what your actual cost basis is in one of these things. Because then, see, this is an offline kind of conversation.
It's an offline conversation. I can tell you this. I had a guy come by and look at my unit that I have there. It's priced at $69,000.
Yeah.
And he offered me 30. And he was serious. I'm like, do you honestly think there's that much profit in these things? Because I can tell you just some of these things. I mean, the container itself delivered to my yard is about $4,200. But out of this company, I have a separate company called CQ, Cuevas Container Company, where we just sell containers. Because the first 2 containers, when I started Uncontained Living, the guy messed up. I bought it from one of these huge depots. I won't say which one, but he put all the contact information for his supplier on my invoice. Oops.
Yep.
So we just started selling containers, Facebook Marketplace, and I get them at wholesale. And we sell like, I don't know, 15, 20 a week.
What does it go for? What's a container? If I wanted a raw container.
Here, retail is about $4,300 for a 45-foot high cube one trip container in Houston. I have a global exchange on that where I can get them from China. Basically, any major port in the world, I can get containers.
That's awesome. So you're getting them sub 42, and that's your sale price?
Yeah, delivered. I mean, I have about a $350 delivery fee, and I'm all in. They're probably around $4,300. I mean, they move. It's a commodity. It just depends on what ships are in the harbor. Because sometimes I actually am not even getting them from the port. Like, they're still on the ship.
Yeah.
And they got to clear the bill of lading and all that stuff. But so right there, you got 40, because it moves, just call it $5,000.
Yeah.
Okay. Then you got all the doors and windows, and you got to cut those out. You got to hire a welder to do that. You got to put in 2x2 square tubing in all the holes that you cut out. There's a method to doing that. I see people doing it on YouTube all the time, where they're cutting it out and that container pops at the end. And it's like at that point, that container's done. You have to brace them. There's a method to it. And you got all your doors and windows, you got your framing. But the big thing is the spray foam insulation. That stuff is not cheap. 1 inch on the underneath, 2 inches in the walls, and 3 inches on the ceiling. So that's code R values and all those. And that'll run you about $4,500. So, I mean, right there, we're already at 10. And then, the rest of it.
Yeah. You have to frame out. So you've got the container. Are you framing out 2x4s every single wall?
Yeah.
So it shrinks the inside just by whatever, 7 inches or something?
That's 7 inches. But the thing is, it's not structural. We do it 16 inches on the center just because we don't want waves in it.
Sheetrock and all that, yeah.
Essentially, it's just there to hide the electrical and the plumbing and hang the sheetrock on.
Yeah.
It's not a structural thing. But yeah, by the time you're done with the kitchen and everything, I mean, you're north of 50, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I can see it. It's not free to do all that, plus a labor just to do all that.
So if you have like a 2-3 bedroom house, so let's say it's like a 3-1, okay, which I know is not a popular floor plan, but the cost of the kitchen and the cost of the bathroom is spread over all of the rest of that square footage.
Yeah.
Do a container home or a smaller, tiny home, that cost is only being spread over a very minimal amount of square footage. However, when you start putting them together, the price per foot falls off a cliff because every subsequent container, now that has a bell curve to it because the bigger it gets, okay, then we need another bathroom. Then you start going up 2 stories, you need a crane. A crane's $5,000 a day. So these things, again, design is so paramount to keeping costs low. But that second container, like the beach house that I'm doing, that's on my website. That's just 2 containers. So that second container, what does it have? I mean, even though in that design, the kitchen's in one and the bathroom's in the other, but that extra square footage is just flooring, sheetrock, and insulation, a little bit of electric plumbing in it. So the price starts to fall fast when we add 2, 3 together. And then, of course, the bigger it gets, okay, that's another bathroom. We're going up 2 stories, okay, that's a crane. So they can be, as far as we're comparing single family home square footage to a container home of the same square footage, the container home is going to be at least, it's not half, but where you save a lot of money because, time is money in this sense, quite literally, because like the beach house, I'll have it done in 8 weeks.
Yeah.
Between 6 on the real fast side, 10 on the long side, it's finished. And especially, if this is for somebody that's an investment for a realtor that most people who are looking at this would know. Keep his name out of it for now. But if you're living somewhere and we're building a house for you, those draws, I mean, as soon as you start taking construction draws, you're servicing that debt.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'll put an interest reserve in there, but the cost is still there, even if you're not doling it out every month. In my opinion, interest reserves are even more expensive because you're paying the origination fee on the interest that you're going to pay. I mean, it's crazy expensive when you think about it. All of that goes away so fast to where you're in the house in, theoretically 3-4 months.
Yeah.
Sometimes less than that, just depends on the house.
Yeah.
It's going to be faster and as a result, cheaper.
That was the appeal of the mobile homes on the land for me.
Yeah.
Man, I'm looking at this one. You've got a quad with...
Yeah, that's what we're doing in Austin, in Leander.
It's badass. It's
Nice, man. That rooftop deck is...
The rooftop deck with the hot tub looks pretty sweet, too. It's like a beach view on the side of the house. That's awesome.
Real quick, and this has been great, Ryan. Thank you so much for having me here.
Yeah.
If you're on the website, go to commercial. I think it's under what we build.
What we build, okay. Commercial projects, yeah.
So check out, the one thing I really want you to see is the office warehouse that I designed.
Container bar. This thing is cool.
That's cool. Man, we almost built that thing. That was going to be in East Houston. And my good friends, it was going to be for them, but their investor pulled out.
Oh, okay. So this roll-up door, the industrial flex looking one, is this a container development?
Yes. We almost did that. That was ramping up right when the development went down in flames. But that...
I want to know your numbers on this, man. Honestly, this is exactly type of development that I'm looking at.
Yeah.
Not containers. I hadn't even considered it to be a thing, but...
Well, think about this. I mean, the way that this is, as you can see from these designs, so essentially you have your container, that's the office and like the bathroom, the small room, and then there's a roll-up door on the side that goes into the warehouse.
Yeah.
Now, that can go 20 feet. It doesn't matter. We'll just design it to how it needs to be as far as what kind of square footage you look at. And then there's just a knee wall on top of the container, which actually acts as a beam to set things on to make that span work. And at the time, I haven't priced this out, and it's been a long time. That was about 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago when we were looking at that. No, about 3.5. I could build that for 70 a foot. No, 55 a foot. The market was about 70, 75 for just like a metal building. So again, I would have to look at that as things have moved up, but that delta, I would think, is still going to be the same.
Yeah.
And all the same stuff that I was talking about as far as the speed and all of that would still be true here.
Like, what's the benefit of using container there? Why even use it? Just because that one section is going to save you some money?
Well, that one section is going to be built off site.
Got it. That makes sense. And then you're dropping it into like a warehouse, a metal building that is...
Yeah, so essentially most of it is done because, again, while all of the horizontal is getting done, the containers for the offices are getting built.
Yeah.
We pour our, whatever the foundation is going to be, bring the containers in, finish the building. It's about just dropping the containers. You're almost probably 30-40% done right off the bat. And then it's just shell on top of it. So the answer is speed and quality. It's a cool looking.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
One thing, I haven't looked at that market in a while, but what I discovered in the due diligence for that deal was in Houston anyway, trying to find smaller, almost incubator space where like the warehouse would only, wouldn't be that big. Basically that each unit would be somewhere between 1,500 and 2,500 square feet. There is a significant for that. Usually if you're doing office warehouse, you're looking at bigger spaces that newer companies really can't jump in with those fees. Again, this development was purpose-built purpose designed anyway, for Houston, on the site that we were looking at.
No, honestly, like my buddy, he offices out of a place like that. He's got a promotional business. And so he has a little warehouse space. He does all of his stuff. And so I was there the other day and I've found sites around San Antonio and I was like, man, this is a product that is in need.
Yeah.
But like pricing it out, my understanding from hearing some guys in my multifamily group is that they were like vertical alone was like $40 a foot. And that was for a metal building. I don't know if that includes a finish out. So I have to have a conversation with him. So I just wasn't sure, again, how quick and easy it was to put something like this together. Because when I did my quick back in the napkin,
all the numbers that I have on that are so antiquated.
Yeah.
I have to do that again. And it was cheaper to build it like this at that time. And I would think with the way that all materials have gone up because of this design, that delta would remain.
Yeah.
It's just what that number is today. I don't have a clue.
Yeah. Very cool, man. Well, look, let's stay in touch. Give me all your stuff, right? And I'll put it in the show notes. So if you're listening, if you want to talk tiny homes and you want to get a better idea of container homes specifically, then definitely reach out to Juan. He's going to give me his information. It'll be in the show notes. It's a great conversation. Good having you on, man.
Yeah, really enjoyed it. Thanks so much.
You're just down the road. So, yeah. Are you still in the Heights? You still in the Heights?
No, I moved down to Leeds City.
Okay. So, yeah, because I was going to say, my buddy, we visit some friends. They're up in the Heights. Swing by and hang out.
Yeah. Well, if you're heading to Galveston, let me know.
Well, yeah, we'll do. I'll let you know, man. Well, good catching up. I'll let you know whenever this thing comes out, you'll get some promo stuff if you want to put it out and some artwork and whatnot. So good catching up.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, Randall. I really appreciate it.
Have a good one.
I enjoyed it. Take care.
Take care.
Surprisingly, most of the agents we speak with got into real estate hoping to gain passive income and become work optional. However, only 1 in 5 ever start investing. Most are simply too afraid to start. Once you get educated by listening to this show, you'll be able to overcome that fear and become the 1 in 5 who are finding financial freedom. Don't miss a single episode. If you want to stay up to date, the best way is to make sure you're subscribed. So if you haven't done that, go ahead and do it now. And we'll catch you on the next episode.